Hey, what's happening? Happy Saturday. It's Daryl here. It's not so bright and early, 10 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, why so late? Why am I dressed differently? Okay, here's the 411, the straight deal on this. Some mornings, inevitably, it was a usual morning, 2:30 in the morning. I go through the news feeds, and some mornings nothing really pops out at me. I'm not just going to come on here and babble. If I don't feel strongly about a story, I'm not going to do it. And today was one of those mornings. I'll tell you guys this: the one that came closest. I was thinking about talking about Vice President Pence and how he just seemed to have finally get the cojones to come out. And don't get me wrong, Pence is still a Republican, and he's one step removed from Trump, and he's nobody I have anything good to say about. But he did finally get the cojones to come out and call out Trump. He did not have. It was purely ceremonial. His whole presence on January 6th, and he did not. This is what I was going to talk about. How Trump actually came out and used the phrase "overturn the election." That's what I was thinking of talking about. That right there. That is. What does that tell you right there? Overturn the election. First of all, we all know that it was a honest, fair. Biden won, right? But the way that he phrases it, it's like there's not. He doesn't even pretend anymore. That he wanted Pence to reverse the American people's decision, and Pence finally had the cojones to come out and call him out on it. And say, listen, I heard Trump say this, and no, I did not. And Trump, the thing I liked about Penn's statement was he said, he called it like it was, that this is the American people's vote, and he doesn't, and that he'd be going against our democracy, our basic foundation of this country, by doing anything to try to overturn the election. That phrase right there, overturn the election. That just spells it out right there. Taking the vote away from the American people and reversing it because he's a wannabe dictator. That's scary as hell. But that's all I had to say about it. So I wasn't going to do a story about that. Now, there's other times when I have these things that have happened throughout my life. Very interesting things. And I try to figure out a way to put them into a story. For instance, there's one time where I found a human jawbone in the forest when I was about 19 years old. Very interesting. I found part of a human being. That's an interesting story. There's another time when I was only 14 years old, and me and a couple friends went into a junkyard after hours. Well, actually, all day Sunday when it was closed. And managed to drive around the vehicles. It was the junkyard was up in the woods, and there was hundreds or thousands of junk cars there, including a '69 Mach Mustang, which I remember. And I didn't know how to drive, but we drove the cars around all day for like 4 hours. It was slightly illegal. That's an interesting story. There's another story, a scary story of when I actually saw one of my friends OD. And that was the end of him. That was a terrifying story. These are things I thought about talking about, but I wanted to work them into other, stories, things that I was talking about. So I figured I would pick one of those to talk about today. And the one about the OD is a little harsh. The one about the junkyard, I don't know if the term limit that I can't get in trouble for the length of time that's passed that I can no longer be prosecuted. I don't know if that's passed, so I'm going to have to look that up first. So I'm going to talk about the human jawbone. Here's the thing, though. I think in the title, I haven't titled it yet. I think I'm going to call it a mandible, because I'm not sure if YouTube's going to let me call this "the time I found a human jawbone." That might be pushing it for my monetization. We'll find out. All right. Here's the story. This is what reminded me of this. Is just when I was talking about a couple of videos back about somebody called me out saying that they didn't think I worked a day in my life. And this is back when I was 19 and I was going to school full time and working full time. And I came home in between and I took my dog for a walk. This mutt I had named Benson. This dog just started following me home on my paper route, and I ended up adopting him. So I came home from school about 12 p.m. It was a fall day, I remember, in the autumn. It was in, I'll tell you guys what town it's in. I'm no longer in that town. Watertown, Connecticut. And Route 8, Interstate 8, goes through that town and then up into Massachusetts. And I took my dog for a walk that morning, and we wandered up, and there's kind of these large, where the highway was cut into the mountain. You know, there's rock cliffs. So me and the dog kind of went on trails and kind of walked all the way up to the top of a lookout where we could look down at all of Route 8 going by up in the woods. And I remember glancing over, and I still remember this clear as day. It was right at the base of an oak tree, sitting just above the leaves, exposed, whitewashed, a human jawbone. It was whitewashed, so, you know, and that's all that was there. No other bones. And, you know, it's funny because when you see a human jawbone, you know, even though I was 19 or so, right off the bat, like that ain't no animal bone. That's a human jawbone. It still had some molars in it. I think it still had some of the front teeth in it. Most of the teeth were still in it. But the thing was, it was whitewashed. You know, which, you know, even at 19, I knew that bone, that means it had been there for a considerable length of time. Okay, so what to do with this? My dog, you know, kind of sniffed it out. I picked it up, brought it home. Now, here's the thing. At 19, I'm so glad I didn't do this. I seriously considered keeping it. I still remember that, and I thank the blessed Lord that I did not do that. You know, not to get all crazy superstitious or ghosts into ghosts or religion or anything, but man, it would not have been right to keep a piece of anybody's body, you know, and for any length of time. So I brought it home. I think I told my mom. I don't remember telling my mom too much about this. She was working full time. Like I said, I lost my father, so she was working very hard to be both mother and father. So she was going to school and working most of the time. And I kept it for a few days, and I called the Watertown, Connecticut Police Department. Told them on the phone, yeah, you know, and I really thought they would have made a bigger deal out. I found a jawbone. You know, they asked me, you know, you found what? A jawbone, a human jawbone. And I don't, you know, of course they didn't believe me. Okay, so I put it in a paper bag. And this was about a day or two after I found it. After, thank God, I decided to hand it in and not keep it as some kind of cool thing, you know, that you do when you're a teenager. And I see the cruiser come up the road, right? I walk out to meet him, and it almost looks like a lunch bag, you know, a brown paper bag. I walk up to the window, and I asked him. This was 36 years ago, and I still remember it clear as day. I asked him. I said, he's like, yep. You know, what, could I help you? And I was like, did they tell you what you were coming here for? And I can't remember what he answered, but he certainly didn't say. He did not really, you know, it didn't click. They told him I said a human jawbone, but obviously that's not what he was expecting. So I handed him the paper bag, and he's still sitting in the cruiser. And he looks at it, and he goes, "Holy Jesus!" And he jumps up in the cruiser, and he drops the paper bag, and he starts yelling at me. Now, mind you, this was around, I think, just before 1990, 1988, 1989. AIDS had been around. HIV had been around for almost probably a decade at that point. Okay, we knew how it was transmitted. The reason I say this because he started screaming at me, "Holy Jesus! Don't you know you can get AIDS from that?" That was his biggest fear. That by picking up this is a policeman, a police official. You know, 10 years after HIV had been around, all panicked to that. Either somehow I was going to give him the cooties just by standing next to his cruiser. Kind of made me lose a little bit of respect for the police force at that point. And I told everybody around me after that, I was like, did you believe this cop really freaked out? He thought he was going to get AIDS from a whitewashed bone. Okay, so after screaming at me and telling me that I better go wash my hands and get tested for AIDS and all this other nonsense, no call back, nothing in the newspaper. I later found out, though, about 20, 30 years early, sometime in the early 70s, I believe, or late 60s, a vagrant had gone missing in that area, in that town. Another thing, too, I think it was shortly after, about 8, 9 months later, a dog up the street brought home the rest of the skull, carrying it in his mouth. Nobody ever called me back up. That was when I saw that cruiser go down the street. That was the last I ever heard of it. You really think that if you found a piece of a human being that, the cops might have a few questions, or that was this, besides for the AIDS stuff, that was the second part of the weirdness. But it turns out, it sounds like this, and it fits with the piece of the bone being whitewashed. There was a piece of some poor soul that a vagrant, God knows that the people with mental issues, emotional issues weren't treated as well, or weren't recognized as, weren't treated as well as they are today. And he just disappeared, and there's probably still pieces of this poor, unfortunate soul, I'm willing to guarantee, somewhere up in the woods up there. So that's that story. And the thing that freaked me out, though, was the way this policeman responded to this. All right, I'll tell you guys about those other stories coming up, especially the junkyard one. I got to look up, though. I got to make sure I won't get in any trouble. You guys have yourself a fantastic Saturday.